Welcome back to Hardball. More than 4 years after 9/11, Osama bin Laden remains nowhere to be found. Today, despite the president's pledge early on to bring him to justice.
I want justice. And there's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said, "Wanted, dead or alive."
But now an explosive new book from a former top CIA operative says bin Laden got away because the military wouldn't give him the forces he needed to corner the terror leader in the mountains of Afghanistan. Gary Berntsen is the author of Jawbreaker, The Attack on Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, a personal account by the CIA's key field commander. And he joins me now from New York. Gary, thank you for joining me.
Good evening, Nora.
You make some pretty strong charges in this book against military commanders and the CIA. You claim that we had bin Laden cornered and that we didn't go after him. What proof do you have of that?
We were making efforts against him. And I'd like to start with the fact that, I led the team in Tanzania after the bombings of those embassies in East Africa. I was on the ground in Afghanistan a year before 11 September, part of a team trying to capture a key bin Laden lieutenant. And of course, I was sent into eastern Afghanistan to lead CIA's largest team that was there. So,
okay, but what about Afghanistan? And
well,
what
in
about
Afghanistan, with Tora Bora, it began, the final portion of that operation began after we seized the capital, Kabul. I sent an 8-man team down into Jalalabad. From Jalalabad, they moved down south, right up against the mountains there, where Tora Bora was back up in the mountains. I inserted a 4-man team with 10 Afghan guides. They got up on a mountaintop over about 800 to 1,000 Al-Qaeda members that had fallen back there. We began airstrikes on them. We conducted offensive operations against them. An SF team came in and helped us, and eventually Delta Force would come in and support the effort.
But how you have made the claim that we had bin Laden cornered and that we failed to get him. What proof do you have?
We had locations on him. We had human source reporting, which had proved reliable throughout the war, and that is why we won the war so rapidly. We had picked up a radio off of a dead Al-Qaeda member, and we're listening to bin Laden pray with his people, apologize to his people for bringing them in there. I had CIA's top Arabic linguist with me who had listened to bin Laden's voice for 4 years. We threw a 15,000-pound Blue 82 at him, and then we had B-52s conduct strikes on the same areas where we knew he was. He was willing to constantly sacrifice the lives of young Muslims to save his own skin.
You have said, I knew exactly where he was.
Yes, we did know exactly.
So why didn't you and his team go get him?
Well, of course, there was quite a bit of fighting going on. We had about 2,000 Afghan allies that were, the Eastern Alliance, which was created. There were gunfights, there were gun battles. We moved up the mountains, with these Afghans. The Afghans were less than reliable, and this is why I was calling for ground forces. And I called for, 600 to 800 Rangers to be inserted in there. And had 600 to 800 Rangers been inserted, we probably would have ended the thing.
So you called for backup and you didn't get it?
Well, the point was that wasn't my call in the end. I made the request in, the first 2 or 3 days of December. We initiated that operation. We inserted our team in late November into Jalalabad.
So did General Tommy Franks, the 4-star commander, did he deny you those Rangers that you asked for?
I requested the Rangers directly from the commander of JSOC, who was on the ground out there. And of course, their decision was not to do that. They were pleased with the fact that we were killing several hundred of them a day. The problem is this: when you're fighting terrorists, success for the terrorists is not defeating us on the battlefield, it's escaping. And I was trying to make sure that we eliminated every single one of them. Mm-hmm. And in that case, we didn't. We killed quite a large number of bin Laden's forces. We killed 75% of the people there. He did cross the border. You may recall that 130 of them were captured by the Pakistanis on the backside of Tora Bora. But bin Laden and his element were able to escape.
You were on the ground, Gary,
yes.
and we understand that. But General Tommy Franks, who's now retired, says that you're wrong.
I was the guy on the ground.
Well, he says this, and let me just put up, because we called him today. He wouldn't comment,
right.
But he referred us to his comments that he made last year, and he said, quote, "We don't know to this day whether Mr. bin Laden was at Tora Bora in December 2001. Some intelligence sources said he was. Others indicated he was in Pakistan at the time. Still others suggested he was in Kashmir. Tora Bora was teeming with Taliban and Al-Qaeda operatives, many of whom were killed or captured, but Mr. bin Laden was never within our grasp. Should we believe you or the 4-star general?
General Franks is a great American. I, however, was on the ground running the intelligence collection operation.
So you're with the CIA.
Correct.
And the four-star commander, General Tommy Franks, says you're wrong. He wasn't within our grasp. Why was there this battle going on between the CIA and the military? And
well, it's not so much of a...
I mean, is this part of the problem about why we didn't get Bin Laden, why we don't have him?
Let me say this. The U.S. military, the soldiers that were with us on the ground there fought like lions. They did a wonderful job. The problem was Tora Bora was a very, very difficult place to access. It was an area that was far away, it was high, it was cold, it would have been very difficult, and it would have been risky to put soldiers in. There likely would have been significant casualties. And the fact is no one, whether they're in the CIA or the military, gets ahead taking risks. It would have been a risky endeavor. But I put my 4 men in there. They went up, and actually 2 of my men were CIA officers, and 2 of them were JSOC officers that had been assigned over to me. This is a fact of the war. Again, I was on the ground there, and with all due respect to those folks in CENTCOM, they provided us with hundreds of airstrikes. They threw in a Blue 82 at our request.
Which is a giant bunker-busting bomb.
15,000-pound device. There were only 3 of them used in the war. 2 of them at Mazar-e-Sharif, 1 in Tora Bora. We weren't throwing it at a 7-Eleven.
Right. You thought he was... Well...
And there was only one left in the inventory. There was only one left in the inventory.
I remember that, Gary, at the time, because I actually was with Rumsfeld in December of that year. I went to Bagram with him, and I know, of course, we did not have many troops on the ground at that time, and it was largely an airstrikes operation.
Difficult operation, and again, those men, in the United States Armed Forces that fought there fought like lions.
It's just interesting, Gary, because the claims have been out there, and this was fought over in the 2004 campaign, because Senator John Kerry said repeatedly, we had Bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora, and this president relied on troops on the ground instead of our military forces. And yet he couldn't make that charge stick.
They relied on the CIA, and we did, actually. We went into a province. Look, 8 Americans went into a province in complete chaos. They went down into a very dangerous area. They then, 4 of them, scaled a mountaintop to get over between 800 to 1,000 of the enemy in the battle of what is called the Battle of Milwaukee. And they were incredibly brave men. This is not a story that, it was mentioned, of course, in Bob Woodward's book, Bush at War.
Right. Gary, let me ask you, because we are talking about that key date, December 2001, 2 months after September 11th. And I want to play for you a clip of President Bush just about that time. He was asked where Osama bin Laden is, and here's what the president said.
So we don't know whether he's in a cave with the door shut or a cave with the door open. We just don't know. There's all kinds of reports and all kinds of speculation. The thing we're certain about is that he's on the run. That he's hiding in caves, if hiding at all. And the other thing I'm certain about is we will bring him to justice.
So, Gary, you say that you knew where Osama bin Laden was, and the president says he was in a cave with a door on it.
Let me say this. We tracked bin Laden with our reporting from Kabul down to Nangarhar province, into Jalalabad, down into the mountains. We had a steady stream, but every once in a while you get a report that says he's off, in left field, here, this place, or that place. But when you get a line of reporting, a stream of it, and we're marking it on a map, we can see consistently, which way he's moving, and from multiple sources. And then, of course, we were listening to his voice on an unencrypted radio.
Can I ask you, Gary, are you a Democrat?
No, I'm a Republican. And I'm a loyal supporter of the president, and I think the president is doing a good job in the fight on terrorism.
So do you think, though, that we're going to catch, or any closer to catching, Osama bin Laden today?
I think we will, and I don't think it will be an error either. There are people making significant errors, making significant efforts at this point in time to try to capture him. And,
but if
sooner or later
knew,
we'll get
Gary,
a break.
where Osama bin Laden was,
at that point,
and if there was another CIA field commander tomorrow who calls up and says, I know where he is, what's to say that this mistake won't be repeated again?
Well, I think that, there were, if you looked at the Afghan war, it was a flawed masterpiece. A lot of things went well. A small number of Americans did fabulous things on the ground against significant odds. And, it's unfortunate that we didn't finish it there. A lot of people were trying. You have to remember, there's a lot of bureaucracy in between that key field commander, whether he be an agency officer or a military officer, and the president. The president has good intentions. He's trying to do this. He's trying to end this. It's not easy. It's not easy. I did this for 23 years.
Gary, thank you so much. Your book, Jawbreaker, is a fascinating read. We very much appreciate it.